in Seoul, South Korea. I'm standing here in the central part of the city, just a couple hundred meters away from the entrance to the presidential office, where we saw South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol arrive here just under an hour ago after being released from detention at a detention center just south of Seoul. And he passed through this crowd here over my right shoulder, where hundreds of his supporters have gathered at this moment to greet the president. Now, let me recap for you what's happened over the past 24 hours. Quite a remarkable turn of events. Yesterday afternoon, on Friday, we heard from the Seoul Central District Court ordering a cancellation of the president's arrest warrant, hereby ordering him to be released from detention. Now, the reason the courts came to this decision, they gave two reasons for that. The first reason being that there was a procedural error in terms of investigators and the timing of their indictment, saying that their indictment, which should come right after, 7 days after an arrest warrant, that came after that deadline. So in effect, the indictment was illegal. Also, the court cited some issues with the actual investigation itself, which was led by the Anti-Corruption Office. Many supporters of President Yoon have argued that the Anti-Corruption Office for high-ranking officials does not have the jurisdiction to actually investigate charges of insurrection, which President Yoon is currently under. Now, if I rewind a little bit more, going back to early December, why we've come to this situation here in South Korea, if you remember back on December 3rd, the evening of that night, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol surprised everyone here by ordering an emergency martial law order, saying that the nation was in an emergency situation and that the martial law order was necessary because of what he deemed anti-state forces, mainly having to do with the opposition party. We saw that martial law order that was lifted just hours after that martial order was declared by lawmakers that were gathered at the National Assembly, and that martial law order was in fact lifted. A couple of weeks after that, the National Assembly voted to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol back on December 14th, and ever since then, the Constitutional Court is now judging and ruling on whether that impeachment was in fact constitutional. But what's happening over the past couple of 24 hours has to do with this criminal trial. So essentially, President Yoon is having to defend himself on two tracks, with the Constitutional Court and his impeachment order, as well as his criminal proceedings, with insurrection charges, being charged with as the ringleader of this insurrection. So if we focus on the criminal aspect of this, the Anti-Corruption Office began this investigation, as well as the police, as well as the prosecutor's office. So to consolidate and make it more efficient, what investigators did was that the investigation was consolidated into the Anti-Corruption Office, and they led the investigation initially, which led to his eventual detention and arrest back in mid-January. We saw those dramatic scenes here, just where I'm standing here, just a couple of hundred meters away, when we saw officials from the Anti-Corruption Office, as well as law enforcement, essentially detaining a sitting president for the first time in South Korean history. And ever since then, for the past 52 days, President Yoon Suk-yeol has had to spend time in the detention center as he awaited the criminal proceedings. Now, what his lawyers did about a month ago was they filed a request to the courts arguing that this arrest warrant was illegal, and the courts were deliberating on this. They deliberated for about the past 2 weeks, and they finally came to that judgment yesterday, and that's where we've come to. In fact, the prosecutors had 7 days to decide whether to appeal the court's order. By law, they have 7 days to appeal it, or to abide by the court's order to cancel this arrest warrant. And much to the surprise of people who are against South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, the prosecution very quickly came to this decision without waiting the full 7 days, deciding to abide by the court's decision and essentially giving the order to the detention center to release President Yoon. And that's when we saw this afternoon that release order go to detention officials. And within an hour, President Yoon was released from detention. As soon as that came, we saw images of President Yoon stepping out of his presidential motorcade, walking out of the front gates of Seoul Detention Center there and greeting the hundreds of his supporters that were waiting there, waving flags, chanting. Many of them have been there for the past 52 days, showing their support. We saw the president walk out. He was smiling. If you can read his lips, it looked like he was saying thank you to many of his supporters. He was waving his fist as a show of defiance, showing that he is really going to fight this till the end, which he has really argued that, saying that he was going to do that. So after walking a couple tens of meters in front of his supporters, he got into his motorcade. He took the 20-kilometer ride with the Presidential Security Service. In less than half an hour, he arrived here in central Seoul, and he came up to this gate just to the entrance of his presidential office, where many of his supporters are still here, as well as a big police presence. He got out of the presidential motorcade here as well, and he greeted his supporters. And now, for the first time in nearly 2 months, where his residence is located just off camera to my left here, he'll be spending the night here awaiting the criminal proceedings. But overall, what does this all mean for the political situation here in South Korea? Today's proceedings and the court decision to essentially release South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol from detention or cancel his arrest warrant does not really change the circumstances into his criminal proceedings. This was largely a procedural matter. The evidence in his case will still move on. The trial or the investigation will continue, and prosecutors say that they will continue to investigate just so President Yoon will not be under detention, and they will look to bring charges. But many of his supporters will use this decision and really feel emboldened, saying that the courts have finally really acknowledged what they've been arguing all along, saying that this arrest was illegal, and that the prosecution or the anti-corruption office, in fact, it did not have the jurisdiction or the grounds to essentially arrest President Yoon. But again, just to give you another recap of what's happened over the past 24 hours for those of you just joining in, we saw President Yoon Suk-yeol walk out of the Seoul Detention Center just a couple of hours ago after the courts yesterday ruled that his arrest warrant deemed to be canceled on the grounds that the prosecutors indicted him 1 day after their deadline was due, and also there are issues with the anti-corruption office which led this investigation. So we saw the president walk out of the detention center, greet his supporters there, wave to the crowd, get into his motorcade, take the 20-kilometer ride here to Hannam-dong here in central Seoul, and arrive to more of his supporters that have been here really waiting for him to be released. And now he'll be spending the night here at his residence for the first time in the past 2 months. Now, as far as his constitutional court proceedings, again, this is a separate matter. Now, the Constitutional Court, those proceedings, you've seen him appear, President Yoon that is, defend himself in those trial hearings for the past month or so. Those proceedings have been brought on by the National Assembly, the parliament here, which brought on those impeachment proceedings, and the 8 justices, I should say, are deliberating whether that impeachment motion that has been brought on by the National Assembly is in fact constitutional or not. That decision is expected to come sometime as early as this week. And if those 8 justices, if 6 of them decide, in fact, that that impeachment was unconstitutional, immediately President Yoon will be let go of his authority. A snap presidential election will have to be held within 60 days, and President Yoon essentially will be stripped of his duties as soon as that gavel is hit. So, in a way, in the grand scheme of things, in the bigger picture, you could argue that the Constitutional Court matter is essentially, it carries more weight in terms of the political situation here as a whole. That does not say that the criminal proceedings that are being led by the prosecution are not important as well. But again, a dramatic turn of events here in South Korea, the political fiasco that has been going on for the past 2 months plus now, taking a strange turn of events. But again, for all the viewers here on CGTN, we'll be making sure to keep you updated on all the latest developments. So make sure you stay tuned for the situation, the political situation here in South Korea. And with that, I'll be signing off. This is Shane Hahm, CGTN correspondent here in Seoul, South Korea.